leaving only the dead bodies of their parents for the cops to find.
They ditched their clothing, ditched their blood, ditched the blood-stained clothing and guns, returned to the house, pretended to have stumbled on the crime scene for the first time, and at 11:47, Lyle made that very famous 911 call to the Beverly Hills Police Department.
What's the problem? I'm trying to kill my parents. They were shot? Yes. Who was the person that was shot? My mom and my dad. Your mom and dad? My mom and dad.
The boys were frantic and hysterical. And then if you listen to the 911 call, it's extremely disturbing.
In the beginning, the boys weren't suspects.
They didn't interrogate them at length, and usually, if there's a killing inside the home, you're supposed to start with those people who are closest to the victims and work out. Yet they didn't do that.
It just seemed like, somebody wanted these two people dead. It just came off as if it was a professional hit.
But in the first months after the murders, Lyle and Eric went on a spending spree, blowing more than $1 million.
It was mostly the boys' own activities that drew attention to themselves. If they'd flown under the radar, who knows what would have happened.
Eventually, Eric, the younger of the two, started feeling guilty, and he blabbed to a psychiatrist that they were the ones that did it, and the whole thing fell apart.
Lyle and Eric were arrested in March 1990. They pleaded not guilty.
In fact, they give a statement. They fired a gun. So really, you don't be a genius to figure it out. And the case is whether or not that's a self-defense.
In court testimony, Lyle and Eric claimed they were the victims, not Jose and Kitty.
My dad had been molesting me.
They developed what's known now as the abuse excuse. They claimed that they were being sexually violated, abused by their father.
Well, very often with parricide, and that's when a child kills their parents, there is a history of abuse. And so they kill off their parents in an attempt to stop the abuse from happening.
I think before the Menendez case, we felt as a culture that nearly everybody who claims that they're abused probably were. Well, then along came the Menendez, who had killed not only the dad, who they say had abused them, but the mother, who never abused them. That's the kind of shocking fact, I think, made the jury take a step back and say, wait, we need to really examine this abuse excuse.
On July 2nd, 1996, after 2 extensive trials, the Menendez brothers were found guilty of first-degree murder.
Ultimately, the jury didn't buy the little crew neck sweaters, the little sad boy looks, and I think saw through the defense that they put on and saw that they were cold-blooded murderers.
Lyle and Eric are currently serving life sentences without parole at 2 separate California correctional facilities. A beautiful young actress with a promising career, a jealous ex-boyfriend with a volatile temper, one fatal encounter. Number 16, the murder of Dominique Dunn. Dominique Dunn was destined to enter show business. Her father was author Dominic Dunn, and her brother was actor Griffin Dunn. In 1981, Dominique's acting career was in full bloom. The future co-star of Poltergeist was about to hit the big time.
She was a young, aspiring actress. She had an innocence about her that was amazing.
That same year, she met executive chef John Sweeney at a birthday party. The two quickly became inseparable.
And Sweeney was known as having a hot temper, and a lot of Dominique's friends didn't really care for him very much.
By the summer of 1982, Dominique became the target of Sweeney's violent outbursts.
Sweeney beat the crap out of her. She thought she was going to die. He choked her unconscious, banged her head on the floor, did all this. I was absolutely blown away. I couldn't believe it.
On October 30th, Dominique told Sweeney their rocky relationship was over for good. He did not take the news well. That night, Dominique was at her Hollywood home rehearsing scenes with actor friend David Packer. Sweeney arrived at the front door. According to the police report, this is what happened next.
She leaves her friend inside, goes out, and they get into this fight.
Mr. Packer said he then heard loud noises, a loud conversation coming from the front porch.
At some point, Sweeney lost it, lunged at her. They fell off the porch, onto the side, into the bushes, and he had his hands around her throat.
Started choking her here. She started screaming. He then went next door, down this driveway. All the time going down this direction, he's choking her.
But to me, the shocking thing was that someone could have been inside the house, heard her scream, I believe, and didn't go out and do anything to try and stop it.
The police report states that Packer came outside and saw Sweeney kneeling over Dominique in the next-door neighbor's yard.
At that point, John Sweeney told him to call the police and commit a terrible crime.
At 8:52 p.m., a frantic David Packer called the police.
Sweeney stayed at Dominique's side, trying to give her resuscitation. At some point, the police arrived and plucked him out from the driveway.
Police reports state that Sweeney told the deputies, "I've killed my girlfriend."
You know, it's a very personal way to kill someone because you're really looking right at them.
However, Dominique was still alive. Following the attack, she slipped into a coma.
Then she's on life support for like almost a week. And the family finally, after this agonizing week, decided to pull the plug.
On November 4th, 1982, Dominique Dunn died, just 3 weeks shy of her 23rd birthday.
Something like this should not happen to a girl like that. It was extraordinarily shocking.
This was one of those obsession cases. If her boyfriend couldn't have her, she couldn't have life as well.
Sweeney was charged with murder, but during the trial, his lawyers claimed Sweeney killed Dominique in the heat of passion. On November 10th, 1983, he was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Sweeney was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison.
It is without a doubt the worst trial that I've ever participated in 30 years.
I was absolutely stunned when I heard the verdict. I was furious. I was enraged.
Sweeney served less than 3 years.
I think she had tremendous potential, and I think she was a very special girl. It's really incredibly sad, and it's our loss.
Coming up, a horrifying murder that continues to haunt Hollywood. At the end of a quiet street in a small upstate New York town stood the house simply known as High Hopes. Inside lurked a troubled young man, Ronald Butch DeFeo. More than 30 years later, his actions still haunt us through countless books and films. Number 15, The Amityville Murders.
The town of Amityville is a small community. It's about 9,000 people. I mean, you're basically talking upscale living right on the shore.
After a lifetime of hard work, Ronald DeFeo Sr. moved his wife and 4 children from Brooklyn to their dream home. But the dream was only a facade.
It was a dysfunctional family at the height of all this turmoil that led up to the murders. The father was out of control. He was beating the children, beating the wife.
On the night of November 13th, 1974, fueled by a potent cocktail of booze, drugs, and self-pity, Butch decided it was time for the abuse to stop.
Well, what he does, he goes up and grabs one of the guns and proceeds to walk into his mother and father's room and sticks the gun up and boom, shoots his father several times. The mother just is startled by the gunshots, and then as soon as she looks up, he shoots her.
The boys were next. 11-year-old Mark was killed instantly. 9-year-old John was not so lucky.
The younger brother did not die instantly. It was a very painful, slow death for him. He then methodically walks out, kills his 2 younger sisters, one after the other.
Butch shot 13-year-old Allison in the face. Then he put the .35 caliber Marlin rifle against the head of his 18-year-old sister Dawn and pulled the trigger. Ballistics experts maintain that a blast from such a rifle could be heard a mile away, but no one heard a thing.
Butch decided that he's going to take all of his bloody clothes and he's going to get out of there. So he drives out to Brooklyn and he dumps all of his clothes.
He showers, clips his beard, dresses nicely, makes it to work by 6 in the morning, and goes on like normal.
He decides to go, well, I'm going to go to Henry's bar, a little local bar, and proceed to get drunk with one of his buddies and shoot up heroin. Well, finally he says he's going to sneak into the house, and when he does, that's when miraculously he discovers the bodies. And someone killed my parents. Someone killed my parents.
Butch was a suspect from the beginning, and his own stories spun wildly out of control.
He starts to tell everybody that this was a mafia hit. The cops don't necessarily believe him.
Butch pled not guilty by reason of insanity.
You people just don't understand.
He said the voices inside his head urged him to kill his family.
The only chance he had was by showing that he was crazy by a defensive mental defect.
Now, a lot of people want to talk about, is he mentally unstable? You know, the psychologist had rendered him to be, had to suffer from antisocial personality disorder.
He basically admitted on trial he'd done it to them before they did it to him.
At trial, Butch admitted taking heroin before the murders. He was found guilty on all counts.
A couple of years later, George and Kathy Lutz moved into the house, and within a period of 28 days, made one of the most horrifying novels that were ever made, and scared the hell out of America with the Amityville Horror.
The Lutzes claimed that the house was haunted.
They had been levitated. They said they heard disembodied bands. Their banisters had been ripped off, and then the windows had been ripped out.
And there's pigs with red eyes glowing, and there's ooze dripping out of the walls. Well, that's interesting, but it's also pretty much a Hollywood fabrication.
The Lutzes' story was soon discredited, but that didn't stop Hollywood from making 8 sequels.
In my opinion, the real story is 10 times scarier than any fake ghosts or demons. So you know we're talking about true evil.
In 1983, a legendary R&B singer moved in with his parents to try to heal their troubled home. Within 6 months, he was dead at the hands of his father. Number 14, the murder of Marvin Gaye.
There's so many shocking parts of the Marvin Gaye story. First of all, Marvin Gaye, a beloved American singer. Then the fact that it's a father killing his own adult son. That's almost unheard of.
The Gaye family home was not exactly a happy one. Gaye prohibited any form of dancing, television, or popular music.
He wanted to make sure that his children were brought up in the strictest form, conveying every thought to pleasing God.
In the case of Marvin Gaye, there was something, a dynamic in that family that was missing between him and his father.
Young Marvin tried to escape the abusive home by turning to music. By the time he was 25, Marvin was one of Motown's rising stars. But with the fame came a whole new set of problems.
Then ultimately, substance abuse comes in, and Marvin Gaye was an abuser.
By 1980, despite being a millionaire many times over, Marvin Gaye was broke.
Marvin owed over $4 million in back taxes. All of a sudden, all these 17 automobiles, we had to get rid of them.
Yet Marvin Gaye had one more comeback left in him. In 1983, sexual healing made him the toast of the music world and earned him 2 Grammys. Back on top, the singer decided to move home to help his ailing mother.
Marvin would move back into the house and was fighting his own demons, drugs at the time.
On April 1st, 1984, a day before his 45th birthday, Marvin Gaye was killed by the very same gun he had given to his father as a present. No one is quite sure how the argument started.
There was obviously a huge argument between the two of them, and Marvin's mother witnessed the whole thing. Father pulled the gun on Marvin and shot him at point-blank distance.
The first bullet tore through the singer's heart.
They found 2 gunshot wounds. 1 gunshot wound was considered fatal. That was the gunshot wound to the heart, lung, liver, and diaphragm area.
And the father went onto the front porch, threw the gun into the front lawn of the house, and just sat down and waited for the police to arrive.
The autopsy revealed drugs in Marvin Gaye's system. Later, it was disclosed that Marvin Sr. was severely bruised from his final fight with his son. The lawyers for the elder Gaye made this fact the basis of their defense.
It was not difficult to be able to argue that there was a beating. It was administered contemporaneous with the shooting, and so we had some good defense issues.
In the struggle
there's often injuries to both parties, and that can be helpful in reconstructing whether this was cold-blooded murder, whether it happened after or during the struggle.
The defense team was successful. Marvin Gaye Sr. was given a suspended 6-year sentence for manslaughter.
You know, I think Marvin Gaye is one of the most tragic cases because Marvin Gaye had become so paranoid